All right, my name is John Thompson. I am the founder of Spring Framework Guru. And in this video, I'm going to show you how easy it is to create a simple application using Spring Boot 2 and the Spring Framework. And what we're going to do is display some simple jokes, and we're going to utilize a tool called Thymeleaf, which is a templating engine. And we'll take jokes from a random joke generator for Chuck Norris quotes. And we'll take those little Chuck Norris jokes and display them on a web page. I'm going to show you how to do that using Spring Framework 5 and Spring Framework 2, or I'm sorry, Spring Boot 2. And what we're going to do is go through and step by step we're going to build this. Now, after this little section of the video, the rest of this is from my course, Spring Framework 5, Beginner to Guru. This is a section of the course where we do go in and build that jokes app. So I'm going to share this with you. We're going to assemble the lessons together. Now, in the full course, you will get full access to all the source code examples. Not going to have that on YouTube, but you will see everything step by step and all the code that is generated for it. So you should be able to build a working example. So it's pretty easy application using Spring Framework. We are going to use Spring Boot 2 in this, and we will get a working web application that's going to display little Chuck Norris quotes or Chuck Norris jokes. So I hope you enjoy this video. I think you'll get some value out of it if you are new to the Spring Framework. All right, we're going to have a lot of fun in this module of the course. What we want to do is create a web application for displaying jokes. And we're going to have some fun. We're going to use Chuck Norris quotes. In my Spring Boot Actuator course, I did a project for Spring Boot Actuator to display random Chuck Norris quotes. And I happen to have that jar up on Maven Central. So we can pull down that jar into this project and get a ready-made random Chuck Norris quote. So the format of this is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to give you an assignment. In the next module, we'll go through the assignment, and you'll have a downloadable PDF that you can use of that assignment. And I'm going to challenge you to work through it, because it's going to use stuff that we've used all the way through the course so far. And this is a chance for you to apply it. Now, I am going to go through that assignment, and then the rest of this module in this course is we will go step by step to go through that assignment. So I'll show you exactly that. So I'm going to give you a challenge so you can go out and try to take on the challenge. And if you get stuck, don't worry, because I'm going to go through everything step by step. We'll do live coding exercises, and I'll walk you through it step by step. And at the end of this module of the course, you'll have a working little joke app that you can hit refresh on and see a little Chuck Norris quote. Should be a lot of fun to do. All right, we are going to go over an assignment to build the Spring Boot joke app. And the first thing we want to do is head over to Spring Initializr and create a brand new Spring Boot project. And in that project, all we are going to need is the Web and Thymeleaf dependencies. So just those two dependencies will work for us. And we are going to add in a dependency. This is from my Spring Boot Actuator course, where we had a little Chuck Norris joke generator. And we want to bring this jar into our project, so we're going to add that to Maven as a dependency, or if you want, as you're working through this, you can also use Gradle. That is at your option. And then we need to get a handle on the Chuck Norris quotes class from that jar, and we are going to call the method getRandomQuote, and that will give us a random Chuck Norris joke to display on the web application. The next thing that we want to do is create a Spring MVC Jokes controller. And we want to map the context root to that. And I found sometimes it can get a little flaky, so we want to do / and an empty string, and that should keep things happy with that as far as mapping the root context. So that way we can just go to localhost 8080, and our joke page will display, so we're not going to map anything complex there. Next, we want to pass in the model to our controller, and we are going to append a joke property to that. And from our service layer, we are going to get that joke and append it to the model. And we're going to pass that back to Thymeleaf. And then on step 7 there, we are going to return a view name of Chuck Norris. And then, of course, we want to create a Thymeleaf template called Chuck Norris. And on that template, we're going to want to display the joke string property. So I'll leave that up to you as to how you format the HTML. And We'll go through and add a property there. And then, of course, we want to run the app, and we should be able to hit refresh, and see a random Chuck Norris joke display on the web page. Okay, in this section, what we want to do is create a brand new Spring project, and we're going to use Spring Initializr to do that, and I'm going to do it right from inside of IntelliJ. So I'm going to come up to File, say New Project, and we are going to use Spring Initializr. You can see that it is there at start.spring.io, and if you are not using IntelliJ, you can go right to that website, and I'll toggle that over to that right now. There's the Spring Initializr website, so you can go there and generate project, and that will download a zip file that you can use for the starter of the project. But I'm going to use IntelliJ for this demo. Come back over here to IntelliJ, and we leave it at the default and say next. And I'm just going to use my domain.joke, and I'm just going to call it a joke app. And the snapshot version is all right. Currently Java 1.8 is the preferred flavor of Java. Anxiously waiting upon Java 9 right now. And all we need is the web dependency. And then we also want Thymeleaf. So that's under template engines. So just to recap, so under web, the web dependency, and then template engines, Thymeleaf. So that's the only two dependencies we need out of the Spring Initializr. And I am going to go up here and grab the milestone 1 of Spring Boot 2. And I will update this in the future as the new milestones and releases come out. And here I want to put it. I have a directory called Spring 5 Jokes app. And now I'm going to say finish. And we can see that it is coming down. While IntelliJ is doing its thing, let's toggle over here. And I've already created a GitHub repository. So it'll be under my GitHub account, Spring Framework Guru, and this will be Spring 5-Jokes app. And once I get this loaded, I am going to commit it to GitHub, but I won't let you see that part. I don't think we need to be teaching you Git at this point. So the Spring Boot application has downloaded. We can see that we have the initial project. So we have a basic Spring Boot application, and we are ready to start coding on it. Now, one thing I just noticed is that we have a non-managed POM file found. So IntelliJ is not happy. Let's take a look at that. And I'm going to come over here to Maven projects. See if a refresh will do it. There we go. So you may or may not have to do that. IntelliJ is usually pretty good, so I'm surprised we had that little hiccup there, but sometimes it does happen. And we can see that it is currently indexing the dependencies, and I notice this red icon here. So for some reason IntelliJ isn't seeing everything yet, but it is indexing. And as it resolves the dependencies, this should come up and work properly. Okay, I resumed the indexing finished. IntelliJ did find all the dependencies, so now this does look like a normal IntelliJ project that we've created out of Spring Boot Initializr. I'm leaving this in just in case you guys are following along inside of IntelliJ and you run into this little hiccup. Initially, it did not pick up the Maven project, and all I did is click refresh, and it found it right away and then indexed it. Okay, I've gone ahead and added a README for this project. That's the only thing I added. You can see it. I got a headline, Spring Boot Jokes app, and describing that it's a Chuck Noris application, and we can see that it is now pushed up in GitHub. So I just want to clarify the master branch of this is just going to be the original Spring Boot project. I may go back and update the releases as Spring Boot goes through the release cycle for Spring 5 and Spring Boot 2. But for now, this is just as it is, came out of as it came out of the Spring Boot Initializr. So we've completed steps 1 and 1.1, and what we want to do now is add in the dependency for the chuck-norris-for-actuator. This will bring in that jar file, and if we come over to the Maven Central, we can see that there's the dependency, and currently version 0.0.2 has been released, and if anybody wants to contribute, go ahead and fork it and add in a joke and send me a pull request, and I'll do another release. So we're going to come back over here to our Maven POM, and all we need to do is add in that dependency, and we'll get out of the free advertisement for a Maven repository. And I just want to point out, as far as Maven POM management, I usually like leaving the Spring stuff at the top, and then any other dependencies that I add, and then at the bottom, I like to have the test, and that's kind of a convention that a lot of Java developers follow. It's a rough convention. There's no official convention there, but this is pretty common to see. And we're going to go ahead and import those changes. And we can see down at the bottom that IntelliJ has refreshed. And if I come in to Maven projects and look at the dependencies, we should see that. There it is. So there's the jar. You can see that he's bringing in, he actually brings in Spring Boot Actuator, so that is a requirement. So we should be happy when we run this. And somebody indented with tabs instead of spaces. Tabs are evil, in my opinion. Very hotly debated topic amongst developers, but I definitely do prefer spaces over tabs. And that completes the second step. So we now have the dependency. In the next video, we will go in and create a service to return a joke from the Chuck Norris quotes class. Okay, we are looking at the third step here to create a service. So I'm going to switch over to IntelliJ and create a service that is going to return back a random quote string from that jar file where we have the class Chuck Norris quotes, and we're going to use the method getRandomQuote. So let's come over to IntelliJ, and you can see that I have the application up. And what I want to do is take a quick look at that class. And if you do Command O inside of IntelliJ, you can see that I already had that typed. But if you do, we get Chuck Norris quotes, and if you just hit enter, now you can inspect the class that came in out of that jar. You can see nothing too crazy here. It's simple array list, and we put in a bunch of strings, and then we have a method here that's going to get a random quote off that array list. So nothing too crazy there. I'm going to close that, and what we want to do is create a package now for our services. And now we'll create a new Java, and we're going to do an interface here. And we'll specify that it is an interface, and we will say OK. And now we want to add in one method. Return back a string. So pretty simple, just get joke. And you can see that it has been created, and it's green because I have not added it to GitHub yet. Now let's create an implementation for that. So we can see that right away IntelliJ highlights that at red. And if I do Command N, implement methods. So here's where things can get a little interesting. Let's do so we're going to do a final property there. And so now let's go ahead and create a constructor to initialize that variable. I want to select none, so we have a 0 arg constructor. Okay, the reason I'm doing this is just to be a little bit more efficient in our Java code. So I'm doing a final variable there, and so it cannot be changed. I'm initializing it inside the constructor, so the constructor doesn't need to know anything about it. And that way, what's going to happen when this class runs inside of Spring, Spring will create it once, and then we'll be reusing that class. So it's not going to get created with every request. If I were to run this, I could have just created that inside my method, but then every time it ran, we'd have the overhead of that object creation. So just a little bit more efficient, showing you some a little bit of Java tips here. So now we need to return that. So now we had just added in a method call there on line 18 to return back a random quote. And the last thing we want to do is make this a service. So we need to add in the @service annotation. So just to recap what I did, I created a services package, created a joke service interface with one method to get a joke and return a string. And then we created an implementation of that. So we are writing to the interface, and we created a private variable, said final, so it can't be changed. And we initialize that class inside the constructor for our joke service implementation. And then we are going to have the method getJoke return back a random quote from that class. So our service is all set to go now. And that completes task number 3 on our assignment to create a Spring Boot Jokes app. Okay, we've completed the first 3 steps on our assignment. And what we want to do now is go in and create the MVC controller for the jokes. So we're going to want to map the context root and add a property of joke. So first, we'll tackle 4 through 7 here. So let's go through and do that now. I'm going to toggle over to IntelliJ, and we'll start knocking this out. So first up, I'm going to create a new package for the controllers. And let's create a joke controller. Go ahead and add that to GitHub for you guys. And we want to annotate this as a controller. Now we created that service. We want to be able to use that service from our controller. So there's the property for that. I'm going to hit Command N for new. We'll create a constructor, joke service, and Spring will auto-wire this for us, but I'm going to show you the annotation. So that shows our intent. Now we want to add in a method that's going to get called, and it's going to return a string. So there's our show joke method, and let's we want to use the request mapping parameter. Now we're going to add in a couple on this. So slash and empty string. So that's going to map out the context root for us. Now we need to append the model with a property for the joke. So we're going to specify that as a input parameter to the method, and the Spring framework will pass in an instance of the model. Now we want to add an attribute, and that property is going to be from the joke service, getJoke. And then finally, what we want to do is return our view name. And we said to use the view Chuck Norris from our assignment. So now we are going to be telling the Thymeleaf template engine to show us the view for Chuck Norris, which doesn't exist yet. We'll be creating that in the next video. So just to recap, we added in the joke controller. We annotated it on line 12 with @controller. This makes it a Spring component, a Spring MVC controller. We added in our joke service, And we are using the interface, and we added a constructor for the joke service, which will get auto-wired by Spring. And then we created a method on line 23 there, show joke, and that will take in a model. And we are adding an attribute to the model called joke, and it will be a random joke string from the joke service. And we are returning back the view name of Chuck Norris. And then finally on line 22, that is what's setting up the request mapping. So when we get a request to the context root, this method on the controller will get invoked to go to the joke service, get a joke, append it to the model, and return it back to the view layer. So you're following along, that completed number 4, number 5, number 6, and number 7. Okay, back to our assignment. In this section, what we want to do is create the view layer. And so on number 8, we want to create a Thymeleaf view for Chuck Norris. And we want to display the joke string property. And at the end of this, we will run the application and see jokes displayed in our browser. So let's toggle over to IntelliJ now. And by default, Spring Boot is going to keep everything in the templates directory. And if you pull this down from GitHub, the templates directly might not be there. That's one of the problems with GitHub. If I remember correctly, it does not store empty directories. So sometimes that'll confuse people. But the Thymeleaf templates will be kept under resources/templates. So what we want to do now is come in and create a new HTML file. And we are going to do HTML5. We're going to call it Chuck Norris and add that to Git. Now, the first thing that we want to do is add in the Thymeleaf XML space. And I'm going to cheat. I have one over here. I'm going to cut and paste that in because I don't want to type all that out. So what this does is it makes this XML template using the Thymeleaf space. Let's change our title to jokes. Now we have a little paragraph tag, and we're going to say joke here. Now we can take a quick preview of this. Okay, so this is the natural Thymeleaf template. This is what it's naturally going to look like in the browser. So we got a little Chuck Norris joke, insert joke here. That is our template. And what we want to do is come in here, and we are going to use the Thymeleaf command to substitute out that paragraph tag. So we are using this tag. So this Thymeleaf tag, the text tag, says basically replace the text that's in between the paragraph tags of the HTML. And that's going to work based on our controller. So we are appending the model attribute joke from the joke service. So it's going to get that and append that into the text. So it's looking for that out of the model. So let's go ahead and run this now. You can see that it's building down at the bottom. Oh, and I have port 8080 in use on something else. Hold on one second. Okay, this is actually something that does happen quite a bit. I had another IntelliJ window open. I had left Tomcat running on 8080, and you can see here it's complaining about 8080, saying that the port may already be in use, which exactly that's what it was. So as you develop in Spring, you will definitely see this. I promise you that. So we're going to restart it now. And we can see that we came up normally. And let's jog over to Chrome. This time let's go to localhost. And I ran into an error here, so let's take a look and see what that is. Okay, so I made a mistake here. So this is what happens when you see live coding. So it's looking for template Chuck Norris, and I named it Chuck Noris. Instead of a U, I used an E. So let's go in and fix that. So I'm going to go in and refactor. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to restart it. Spring Boot for that get picked up. Yeah, it's not happy. So I'm going to restart Spring Boot so that new template gets picked up. Now, further down in the course, I'm going to show you Spring Boot DevTools, and that would have picked it up if I had DevTools installed, but I do not. So we have to do it the old-fashioned way and bounce the container. Hey, all right. Code runs faster when Chuck Norris watches it. I do another one. Chuck Norris causes the Windows blue screen of death. I hope you guys aren't using Windows. I used to hate that. See if we get one more out of here. All log statements are always at the fatal level. So, fun little app. I hope you enjoyed this. And let's double check our assignment. So we went in, we created a Thymeleaf template, view for Chuck Norris. We are displaying a joke string property and ran the app. Come over here and you can see that we created an HTML5 document. We added in the XML namespace for Thymeleaf, which gives us the namespace for the Thymeleaf tags. We're using the Thymeleaf tag of text to replace the string. So when I view this in a natural template engine, we can see that it comes up with insert joke here. That is the natural Thymeleaf template engine. Whereas if I'm over here, I am seeing that string get replaced by a random string. Oh, kill -9. That is one of my favorites. Okay, I'm going to show you a little tips and tricks with Spring Boot. And what we can do is change the banner on startup. So when I come in and start up Spring Boot and run our little joke application, you can see right at the top there, I get this little banner that comes up. So let's change that. We can do ASCII art for that. And there's a lot of different generators out there. And I got one up in Chrome right now. So this is mine here. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Now you can see you can do a number of different fonts in this little tool here. So if you just Google ASCII art, and this website is one of the first ones that come up. So if you want to play with your own slogan, you can do so. The Star Wars one is kind of cute too. So once you get that copied over to your clipboard, what you can do is come over to IntelliJ, and in your resources folder, create a file called banner.txt. And we are going to add that to Git. I'll put it on a new branch for you guys. And now there's my text. So there's banner.txt. And if I come in and restart Spring Boot, now we can see that banner get created at startup. So it's actually pretty versatile. And they've added some other features. I think you can display an image there now too that gets rendered out. But this is good enough for now, so you can override that banner text. I do that when I'm working for clients quite a bit. I will customize the banner startup, just kind of a little nice touch to add in the client's logo name there, and you might want to put your name there instead of having a Spring pop up. So something fun that you can do with Spring Boot. Now this concludes the section on the Spring Boot Jokes app. So it's just a little simple app, but it got you a chance to go through and review some of the stuff we've been using in the course. So we were able to go in and pretty rapidly create a functional Spring Boot web application. So we went in, created that project in Spring Initializr, brought it down, added in the dependency for my little Chuck Norris quotes, and then we went ahead and created the service layer. If you remember, we went in and used interfaces for the dependency injection to set that up as a Spring service. We created the controller. We injected in the interface type. Spring was able to find that in the Spring context, and it found it by type, and it wired it into our controller for us. We asked the controller to return back the joke on a jokes property on the view model, And then we pass that over to a Thymeleaf template, and we now have that template binding that property out of the model and displaying it on a web page for us. And every time we hit refresh, we go through the whole cycle, go to the service, get a random joke, and display it on the web page. So fun little app, but it helped reinforce all the stuff we've learned through the course so far.